people go home feeling like the world is a better place. And it literally is right where they live. And then, through the summertime, because you tend to do this in spring, in the summertime, we'll close down our street intersection as many times as we want to do things like, movie night, where we'll shut off the street light. Power company will come, shut off the street light, set up a big screen, fill the intersection with pillows and couches, and then we all just watch this movie together and have popcorn. So yeah, barbecues are happening, big potlucks, lots of musical performances. And I think that the biggest thing that we do is this silly, what we call no talent show, where anybody can get up, try to play a song or read a poem or do a performance. Doesn't matter who it is, but kids coordinate it. So everyone in the neighborhood shows up. The intersection's filled with people in folding chairs watching these kids on a temporary stage. And it's just hilarious. So this has happened a few hundred times in our city. We literally now have more community gathering places of all American cities because of this ordinance. And it's contributed to an increase in our participation broadly across the spectrum, political, social spectrum. So Portland has a dramatically increasing amount of participation in, within the form of civic groups, neighborhood associations, and all sorts of initiatives that come from communities where people live. So the effect is tremendous.
How do you deal with the city and get, how can you put a graphic on the street? How can you close it off? How can you get these things done if you're going to do it?
Good point. Good question. All right. Well, that was a key thing to engage from the beginning. First, I got to say, though, in order to make that happen, for my part, as one of the original organizers of this, I was coming from a place where my dad was the founder of the urban design function at Bureau of Planning. So from him, I understood that our city just simply didn't have gathering places. And in fact, when we moved to Portland, there wasn't even one single public square, even downtown. So we had this big cultural cause that most people weren't familiar, and they had no idea that this would be an issue because Americans just grow up without a sense of place or community gathering places. And we literally have to save our money and fly across the ocean in order to experience something like a village scale or a public square, like a piazza, for instance, in Italy, or a plaza in Spain or any Spanish-speaking country, a place in France, a Platz in Germany. Basically, like these things happen all over the world, except in places like ours that were laid out the way that they were, kind of from an administrative point of view, rather than generated by culture. So we had to deal with that question you asked from the very beginning, because you can't get away with messing with the streets for long before you get in big trouble and you get shut down. So this obviously needed to be a sophisticated proposal. So this is basically what we did. We made a presentation to the Department of Transportation, and we said, and this was the wrong people to talk to because they were traffic engineers. They were, at that time, they were not in connection with any of the goals and benchmarks that actually are supposed to guide the development of a city. And really every city and town in the USA has goals and benchmarks that have been reviewed by communities to some extent that are supposed to guide development itself, or even supposed to guide the adoption of codes and planning and building codes. So we went to the wrong folks and we said, hey, we think that we should have a gathering place in our community. After all, the street network is the most community space of any other kind of amenity in the city, including parks. And they said, what are you talking about? That's public space and nobody can use it. That was an amazing thing to hear. Pretty soon, though, we were in contact.
I like that. That's public space. No one can use it. Thereby,
the
definition of public space.
Yeah, it's a paradox. I think America has a lot of paradoxes that we're scarcely waking up to still. So we got in touch with the mayor, and it happened that these were issues that the mayor cared about. And she saw a photograph of what we had already done in our community, and she leaned into it. She asked the ombudsman. The ombudsman is in every city is basically like Superman. The mayor just says to the ombudsman, make this happen. And every bureau has to hop. So we were there in her office when she turned to this guy, Michael Mills, and said, Michael, make this legal. So suddenly we were sitting with the city lawyer to adopt the idea that a street intersection can and should become a public square. And it's not just a leap of faith. Like we were literally showing her, like my favorite example of a village in the world is Siena, where you can literally look at the aerial view of Siena and see that For a population of a typical American neighborhood of about 15,000, which is what Siena is in Italy, they have 37 outdoor gathering places. And then you can look at your own neighborhood and ask yourself, well, with no gathering place in my neighborhood, no wonder my crime statistics aren't this high and my public health rates are this low. And then you look at Siena and you see that their crime rates are super freaking low and their public health indicators are super freaking high. And that's what we did with the city council. That's what we did with the mayor and the city lawyer. We said, look, there's a correlation. There's literally nowhere for people to gather, and everybody's told they have no power in their own community. So within 3 months, this was adopted unanimously by the city council, and they basically waxed eloquent, and they said, on this day, we do this revolutionary thing. If communities will show up in their own space, they will now have a field for creative participation that may change, the destiny of our city. That's a tall order. But when you consider that everybody's disengaged and this is a means to re-engage, maybe there's some promise to that. It's definitely something that I'm seeing is real.